Is this your way of welcoming Mason Marchment? You're just gonna soon first scrum we get with him, you're just gonna stare like open your eyes really big,
No,
freak
I
him
can't
out.
compete. On this, I can do it just fine. Those are my Mason Marchman eyes. That's the best I can do, but his
Well,
are
yeah,
another
it
level.
doesn't help because I've got the brown eyes, so it's like
Well, you'll
gonna
match
work
him
out
when
well.
they get him the brown contacts.
No, well, there's already enough brown-eyed. Like, make him something different. Make him like red or something. Go into the whole red eye bit. Anyway, I don't know what I'm gonna call this. We're gonna work with it, but I just figured with the Kraken having made a trade this morning, I got a text. I see another center, and I wake up and I say, "What do you mean?" We'll get to that. With the Kraken, making that trade, Jason Botterill doing an interview with King 5 Sports about the free agent market, which is kind of interesting. That RJ or the Emerald City Hockey account has tweeted on. I was gonna say is like I don't know if Dylan's firing off tweets. Um,
We
and the
don't have the
draft,
secret intern like Sound of Hockey. We're very transparent
yeah,
about this. It's me
a,
who tweets.
alleged intern. Um, and the draft being tomorrow, which RJ will be at. I figured, hey, let's talk to the guy, see what he's got going through his head, for what the team's been doing. Because as the latest episode of your guys' podcast is titled, the offseason has started early. Um, if I believe that was the last episode, right? I like to
Yeah, it
think I'm a
was.
I'm a good follower. But yeah, RJ, thank you for again, as always, for coming on. Um, Certainly some things that are going on. I mean, the first of the two trades I wanted to look at regarding the depth centers, because I mean, you and I have both on our separate things talked about Mason Marchment, not his eyes, of course. Um, but the Joe Veleno deal, just straight up with Andre Burakovsky. I mean, both of you and I had texted about it. Just not having to retain any salary is brilliant. Um, and I mean, in a vacuum, that's not a bad thing. Like he's not a bad player to have. I mean, he's only 25. You could have figured he could be a depth guy, and it's not like you necessarily have to commit to him, considering what he was a buyout candidate, still remains a buyout candidate. Um, and then the trade for Frederick Gaudreau today, like if you were shipping someone out, maybe I'd understand more, but you traded a 2025 fourth round pick, pick 102 to be exact, to acquire the guy. And as you and I were texting about, I was just kind of like, what the hell is happening? Um, he's got what a $2.1 million cap hit, and he's got a few more years left on his deal. A lot of fans are kind of like, what is happening? What is with the depth forwards? Because I mean, if you look at it, there's already some depth at the center position in the organization anyway. There's already a logjam at the top with Wright, Beniers, Stevenson. Um, obviously Berkeley Catton's going to be knocking on the door. So it's pretty fascinating what's going on right here. What is your rhyme or reason behind it? Any or your thoughts on them acquiring these two forwards? Um, and then maybe a little bit on Gaudreau because you had some good things to say about him when we were talking. So I guess just yeah, your thoughts on these two guys that they've got right now in Gaudreau and Veleno and any rhyme or reason of what lane they might be in.
Yeah, well, I'll start with Veleno because I think that's pretty quick. He's just a 4C depth guy, basically just to make the money work on the Burakovsky trade. I still wouldn't be shocked if he was bought out before the buyout window closes on. I think that's still very much a possibility, especially post Gaudreau trade. I don't think Veleno is a big part of the Kraken's plans. As for Gaudreau, though, I mean, this one was an interesting trade to wake up to because I was trying to, like you, I was trying to figure out where the fit was and why this deal was made. And it took me maybe a couple hours of processing it and thinking it. I did a podcast this morning, so trying to process that while talking about league wide stuff as well. But I think at the end of the day, more than anything, this is a move to improve the culture on the team
Mm.
because I look at Freddie Gaudreau and I think he is a really good example of the type of player that fits what, particularly on a Lane Lambert coach team, but basically what the Kraken are trying to build this culture and this team's identity to be. Somebody who is defensively responsible, someone who is versatile, someone who does work hard, and someone who can finish on his chances when he does get them. And from all accounts that I've seen, again, I don't know him that well, but I've seen Wild fans and people in the organization seem to be kind of sad to see him go just as a person. And so that's my thinking, is that more than anything, this is one of those moves. This is one of those kind of shuffles that you do to try and bring in guys that better fit the culture of what the Kraken are trying to build. And if they are going to have a team that's detail oriented and focused and defensively sound and all this stuff like Lane Lambert likes to talk about and have their process, Gaudreau fits in pretty well with that. And so I understand why they would like the player from that perspective. And I agree with actually trying to fix the culture. We talked about it on the last deep dive that you mentioned earlier, about that being one goal they could have over the offseason, is to kind of swap out some players and try and fix the culture in the room. Now, where I don't understand this trade is just from a, on paper roster management, cap management perspective. And part of this is just my philosophy on how I think a bottom six should work. Look, Frederick Gaudreau, he's going to be your 4C. Maybe he can be a third line winger. He's versatile, right? But ideally, as a center, where he slots in is as the fourth line center. And 2.1 for 3 years is really expensive for that kind of player. You're getting a high end version of that kind of player. You're getting near top of the market, but you're paying a lot more than you need to. Personally, if it was up to me, I would always want my fourth liners to be at or near league minimum, and preferably young guys, prospects who you're kind of working on and trying to develop. The Kraken don't really have a center prospect to fill that spot, so I don't mind if you fill it elsewhere. But on a 3-year term for a 32-year-old, it gets a little dicey there. And yeah, you should be able to get out of it cheaply enough if you need to. But this all comes back to, and I'll let you talk in a second, but just what is the plan? And I went over this on our last podcast. Is the plan, are you trying to make a serious playoff push right now, this season, or are you not? And I don't think the Kraken are. But if you're not, then why are you bringing in an aging center, giving up assets to get him, and potentially just taking a spot away from a young player? So it doesn't seem to fit with this year being a transition year, unless you are so confident that he's going to really help change the culture, in which case it could be worth it. But he very well could go a long way to changing the culture. But that has to be, I think, the main goal of this trade.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting to me because I chatted after the Lane Lambert presser that we were at. I chatted to a couple folks who work in the organization just to kind of get a feel of the guy, because I was just kind of generally unimpressed. I don't know, not moved per se. I don't need him to be up there rah rah, pounding the table, shaking the table with Jason Botterill up there. But I was just kind of like, sure, I just need to see more from this. Um, but the folks I talked to in the organization said that they understand he's going to come in here and they will, have some patience, more patience than they had with Dan Bilesma, which is tough. But they do expect winning. They're not like, I don't think they're here to be okay. You're going to struggle immediately, and that's going to be fine. So it is fascinating. Um, because it's great that you cleared up Burakovsky with sending him away to Chicago. Don't know what the hell Chicago was thinking. It was fascinating to see a bunch of Chicago fans and writers say, "Oh, if they can get the best version of Andre Burakovsky, it could be a great deal." I'm like, we thought he could return to that for the years after. He tore his groin the shift after the All-Star break. It just didn't happen. Um, yeah, no, I agree with you on the fourth line philosophy as well. I see folks thinking that this team will get back to the depth forwards that they had, the lines of scoring they had in year two, and that's just unrealistic. I really wish that idea would die, because I don't think that's sustainable. I don't think what happened in year two is realistic to think you can do going forward. So yeah, no, I think that is my big thing, is like, hey, do you really expect this guy to have a big impact going forward? So um yeah, it's fascinating, especially because, well, and I don't know if you want to look at it, because you mentioned not nearly having a prospect for that. Maybe you mean it by like like how style of play, sorry, but like Berkeley Catton, what's the plan here? Because so often we've heard, he's gonna be in camp, he's gonna fight for a spot, and they believe he's gonna compete for it. Um, but I'm not putting Catton as your 4C, whether it's physically or wanting to get him a look.
I don't
right?
think he was ever going to be the 4C. I think you're
No.
probably going to have to move him to wing to start things off just because that's where the space is. And it's a little less on his plate for him to have
Yeah.
to deal with without the defensive responsibility and all that stuff. Just let him be creative offensively. This doesn't block Berkeley Cat.
Yeah, and yeah, no, that's how I viewed it. I had never viewed him as coming in to play C, considering the contracts you've signed, Beniers and Stevenson too, and I'm not moving Shane Wright out of a center spot. So yeah, that kind of leads me into the free agency comments because um saw this today. I was hanging out. I see this tweet from at Emerald City Hockey on Twitter about how general manager Jason Botterill was interviewed. I think it's Brianna Vasquez with King Five.
Yep.
There's not a lot of depth in the free agency market, which is accurate. And we felt trades were a better opportunity to improve our team than free agency. RJ behind the account said that's what I like to hear, and I just figured that there was going to be folks who were like, who want this team to be active in free agency, right? And I can understand that for sure. I mean, living in this city, I get wanting your team to be active in free agency. It's not necessarily something that happens. Um, but if you look at the available free, at least right now, because this list can change still, right? We very well, I imagine that John Tavares stays in Toronto. I mean, just looking at the UFAs in the forward department, I imagine a bunch of these guys are going to stay, where they're at. I don't know where Brad Marchand's going. I don't think he would have come here anyway.
And Sam Bennett famously on stage said he isn't effing leaving
Yeah.
Florida, so we know he's not going anywhere.
So you like even on the first few pages of this list, things aren't super deep. And we get to three here, and I'm like, great. One of your better options is what, Mason Appleton? I'm, you know, so I understand it. If you want to go to the fourth page, we can go bring back Tomasz Tatar if you really want to do that. Um, So I want your thoughts on it because I know there will be questions about it. I know again, I understand the frustration with, not really hearing that they're gonna look at free agency a ton. Just your thoughts on it and why that's a better thing. Because yeah, it's really not that deep of a class.
Right. And I think for the Kraken, especially given the situation they're in, there are no free agent forwards worth taking a run at aside from Mitch Marner. It's him and then a bunch of mistakes waiting to happen. And so I think Jason Botterill did the best job that he can of saying that without actually saying what I just said, which would be quite rude for a GM to say. And I think, he was tactful as GMs tend to be and just said, well, there's not a lot of depth in the free agent market. There's a lot of good players at the top, but beyond that, there's not a ton of depth. And whenever he did talk about trades versus free agency, it was kind of clear which way he was leaning. I think his actions show which way he's leaning, which is toward the trade market. And I think that's generally the case most years. I mean, free agency is just a minefield of mistakes waiting to happen. I mean, we saw that last year, with Chandler Stevenson and even, with Brandon Montour, who played as well as you can possibly hope he would. You still got age 31 to 37 of that deal coming up.
Yeah.
It's potentially a problem. And so the trade market just makes a lot more sense as a way to improve the team. I think that's what I can certainly see. I think that's what Jason Botterill can see. And so that's the way that he's going. And so we are getting, I mean, I'm looking at the tweet right now. We are getting some feedback from fans who are not too thrilled about those comments, especially after Botterill did promise. I think he said it might have been your direct quote. I'm going to be aggressive in free agency. We're going to be aggressive in free agency this year. That is something that the team had promised.
Yeah.
And that's when he said that initially, that scared me because I don't think that's the right thing for this team to do. Because it's not like in baseball where there's no salary cap and it's
Yeah.
just about how much the owner is willing to spend. This is different. The Kraken's problem is not willingness to devote the resources or spend the money. It's about how wisely you allocate those resources. That's always been the Kraken's shortcoming. And free agency is one of the worst ways usually to allocate those resources. You almost never get good value in free agency. So I think I'm happy to hear this from Jason Botterill, that they're not going to really be aggressive in free agency, or that, I wouldn't expect them to. And I think that's what fans should be hoping for.
Yeah. That's one of the things I so often have to speak with folks about who maybe are, and it's no shame. I've had to learn. If anybody knows about me learning the sport of hockey, it's RJ, right? Like me asking, hey, why can't we just restructure the contract like you can in the NFL? Like let's
Hey, there's no bad questions.
yeah,
No
yeah.
bad
No, that's
questions
my
out
point,
there.
right? Is so like I get it, but yeah, you do have and I mean, if you want to mention spending against the cap, the Kraken did last year. I mean, they were right up against the cap to begin the season. So,
They
I'm
couldn't
just
ice a full roster.
yeah. So, I'm interested though, in talking about that. And if I was interested in a few names, even in the off in the season, but then there's the reports about Mangiapane, which I don't get. Um, the names like as a proud follower of Emerald City Hockey and the Armchair GM streams. I know Nick Ehlers was a guy that I don't know if you specific like he came up a bunch in the Armchair GM streams. Um, and Brock Besser, the only guys that I had kind of eyes on. That depends on what the hell Brock Besser wants to do. I know there's been reports about him in Boston. Um,
Besser
you
is the
know,
biggest mistake out there
yeah.
in free agency this year. Whichever team signs him is going to regret it
Is it you? And so why is that? Is it age?
because
Is it?
you're going to be paying for 40 goal production, which is what he had 2 years ago.
Oh, I see.
But every other season in his whole career, he's been a 25 goal scorer.
Yeah.
That's who he is. You're going to be paying 40 goal money for a 25 goal scorer and an aging one at that.
And what about Ehlers?
Ehlers, I would certainly rather do Ehlers than Besser. I just think he only makes sense for a team that is really trying to go for it and kind of take that next step.
Ah,
Like say Carolina, if you're
yeah.
looking and you can't find someone better on the trade market, maybe he makes sense there, but he should be going to a team that's trying to win right away. And I think that also hits at the heart of the point too. And why people are, and this is where I understand people maybe being frustrated with the Kraken because they did at various points, people with the organization did promise an aggressive offseason, right? And you're going to try
Mhm.
and be aggressive and get better this year and make a playoff push. I think the team has largely backed away from that. And every time now they're being asked about expectations for next year, they've kind of walked it back and they don't want to be talking about the playoffs. And I think they kind of have, if I can guess from their words and actions, I would think that they've made a decision not to make a serious push for the playoffs, a playoff appearance next year. And I understand frustration with that, given that the team has fallen short of expectations 2 years in a row now. And it just feels like the expectations just kind of keep getting lowered and lowered here. And okay, well, when are we going to be competitive? So I get that frustration from that standpoint. But I just think the reality is, and I think Jason Botterill recognizes this with the situation that Ron Francis has created, probably more than a 1 year fix. It's
Yeah.
just going to take more than one off season to really be able to get out of and erase a lot of those mistakes and free up the flexibility to go and do what you want and at any realistic shot at a playoff berth. And you're going to get that flexibility next off season, but it's really hard to do right now.
Yeah. And that's something that just looking at this group is like getting further and further away from inaugural season Kraken. Like you will have to get out of that. Not first 2 years because of what you had to do with those some of the contracts that they signed. Um, I'm imagining you're going to agree with this, but if you disagree, let me know. But just seeing the reports about Mangiapane and looking at the numbers, he's gotten worse, at least production wise, by year. And I'm like, why would I spend that money on a guy who you're just adding another middle six guy? That's what we're doing. That would be
It,
your middle six edition of it's like yearly middle. Here you go, Kraken fans. Here's another one. Like that's your that's who they would, and you can like I imagine you'd say this, that's who they'd posture as the big guy that they brought in. Like if they were to do it, and I really hope they don't. That's my thoughts on the guy. I don't know how you feel about it, but
Yeah, no, I have a pretty similar evaluation of the player. Like I think he's a decent fit for the team, but yeah, he's just another kind of middle six to bottom six winger, and that's what you're bringing in. Now, if it depends on the contract, like if you sign him to a 1 year deal, I love it because you could potentially flip him at the deadline. It's great. A 2 year deal, I wouldn't even necessarily hate because you could just flip him at the deadline next year potentially, and maybe there's some value there. It's good asset management. It's kind of like what we were talking about with Mason Marchment. Yeah, he's another middle six winger. Does he help you get to the playoffs? No, but you might be able to get some assets there for him if you do move him when that contract is up. So like I wouldn't hate it. But it all comes down to what is the plan?
Yeah.
Like, are you
Yep.
trying to make this push or not? And if you're not, then every additional middle six guy that you get to shore things up, whether that's a Gaudreau or a Marchman or whatever, they're going to get you further from a top draft pick and not close enough to the playoffs. And so you kind of have to weigh the benefits of, okay, like Marchman, I think it's worth it. He does make you better in the short term, and maybe that kind of hurts your draft position, but you should be able to get a real nice asset for him at the trade deadline if you're not in playoff position. So I think that's worth it. That's good value. But like if you sign Mangiapane to say it's like a 3-year deal, absolutely not.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. It's just seeing that report, I'm like, this is the guy you're tied to? Nice.
Yeah, well, I mean,
At least
it
thinking,
doesn't sound like they're too interested in anybody in free agency. Like, I don't even think I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if they just didn't sign Mangiapane and he went somewhere else.
yeah, no, I just it's like, and that is a good, what you've brought up is a very good point with this. Sorry, I'm looking at our email about the draft tomorrow. Um, with the mindset that had been mentioned, but it's a great point that you're bringing it up that they've kind of walked away from it. In the mindset of competing, like if you're going to truly get better, does Mangiapane help you? And I would like this year, I'd say no. I would hopefully, if you are a team trying to aspire for more, which I don't think they should, you look at someone else. This is why I see the Donato, like Ryan Donato extension. They're like, oh, you could have brought him back for that. I'm like, if you're getting better, you're not bringing back Ryan Donato. Like, so, yeah, no, like, and I wanted to bring that up. So thank you for helping reposture with that because yeah, it is fascinating how we've kind of moved back because that was said at Quattro's thing. I think Todd said it during the season ticket holder event where they mentioned the jerseys that they're gonna the alternates. So it is kind of fascinating, but yeah, I think in the long term that is a better decision because you're kind of in a mess right now. One of the guys who maybe will help you get out of that mess could be selected tomorrow with the eighth pick. Um, I think Dylan's more of the prospect guy. I know, but do you have any opinions on what Seattle does here with the eighth pick? Because, last year, everything I had understood, read, looked at, it seemed like Seattle would go D. I'm not mad at Berkeley Catton whatsoever. Like, that's, you know, pretty happy with that. But at least this one, I don't know. I kind of have to figure you go D because, you know, you want to talk about, we go back to the trade market, right? Like, I feel like Seattle, similar to the Mariners, you've got a lot of offensive talent you could trade in your prospect pool if you wanted to, acquire somebody. But defensively, I mean, Ty Nelson's what in the AHL? All of your WHL guys you drafted last year or two are just now kind of getting signed. I don't know how many of them are really that close. Um, I just figured maybe you go another D. I don't want to be biased because he's a Thunderbird, but I do know that the Kraken like Radim Murtka, but he's just super raw. And maybe that's a good thing if you're drafting him and you want to mold him. But I don't know. My mind says D with this pick at number 8. Do you have any thoughts on it? Whatever you'll hear tomorrow at the Peacock Theater in Los Angeles?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to be there in person to see the pick. Second draft in a row going in person, and I was certainly shocked by the Berkeley Catton pick because we all kind of figured the Kraken were going D. So I want to be cautious about guessing one position or another, and especially as Bottrill in that interview that we mentioned said they tend to always go best player available. So I'm sure that's what they're going to do, kind of regardless of position. I don't think they're going to view it from a positional lens here.
Mm.
But there's just so many good forwards that are available, and I gotta think someone's going to fall to 8th that's really going to make them think. Like, I don't know. Murtka, the upside is great, but what are the odds he really reaches that upside? Like, it's possible that you're dealing with a Victor Hedman or someone like that, but it's just such an outside chance. You're probably more likely closer to, a Tyler Myers or a Jamie Alexiak type, realistically. Maybe someone a little better version of that. Versus I see some forwards that could potentially fall. Like, I like, or even Jake O'Brien, who maybe you should probably be on the board. Brady Martin, you've got some good centers. I mean, there's rumors of James Hagens even falling out of the top 5 or 6. If he's there, I think you really got to think about it. And so I certainly wouldn't mind them taking another forward. In fact, that's kind of the way that I would lean, because I'm not overly impressed by Mertka. The upside is there, but boy, is he a project. And then
Yeah.
Jackson Smith, I do like him, but I like him kind of in that, 12 to 16 range. I think it'll be a really solid pick there, but 8 seems a little high for Jackson Smith. So I'm kind of hoping for one of the forwards, honestly.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I know ESPN's last mock has them taking O'Brien. And I've seen a few with McQueen as well. That would be fun for all the memes if he ever reaches the NHL level. Um, Plenty of content opportunities for us, right?
Yeah, Tampa can't take him. They don't have a pick that high, but that would be ideal.
Ah, yeah. So, Jesus, that's a good one. I didn't even think about that. God damn it. Uh, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's just where they're at. I mean, you're not getting a guy that's going to help you this year or
No,
probably next year, right? So,
unless
yeah, I
Porter
kind of
Martone falls. He's the one guy who has a chance of
can
playing
you
for him. I don't think
imagine?
he's going to fall to 8, but if he does, the Kraken better pick him. And I think he could actually make the team next year. But other than that, nobody's helping you next year.
Hey, we've been surprised before. Crazy shit happens in the trade, in the draft. Sorry.
That's true.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, it is interesting. Well, and okay, I'll ask you this to round you out and get you out of here. But so often, you know, with this team and how things have gone since year two, it's just kind of been. I felt this way. I believe you have. So if I'm wrong and I'm misquoting you, let me know. But it really just has been, as you've talked about, what is the plan? Like, do you know? Because again, I remember, and maybe I'm wrong, but when Ron Francis started here, he said we have a 4 to 5 year plan. I think Aaron Levine even brought it up to Jason Bottrill and Lane Lambert at the intro presser a few weeks ago. Hey, it's year 5. Like, obviously, this is a new regime, but do you have a plan here? And so I guess just with how they seem to be going now, as we've talked about, maybe walking back from being aggressive and trying to make the postseason this year, do you have more faith in this organization just generally going forward to make a more sustainable? Because all the time we hear it in sports now is making a sustainable playoff product across sports. Some teams do it, some teams just kind of say it. I know you've kind of expressed some frustration with that. I mean, especially watching what we've had to watch for the last 2 years. I don't know. Where are you at with that feeling? Do you feel better about it, considering that they've kind of started to pull back and think, okay, maybe we need to realize this isn't going to be something you can wipe away in one off season? Or is it still, or do you need to see more? I guess, because yeah, I mean, the draft is tomorrow. We still got the summer to go through. So,
Yeah, I mean, I guess cautiously optimistic might describe it. I do definitely feel better than, say, when Ron Francis was in charge, because already we've got way more of a wheeler and dealer at the helm than Ron Francis ever was. And I mean, you look at, we just talked about the free agency market and how bad it is. If you were stuck with that, if you were someone like Francis who just seemed incapable of actually making a trade, where would you be? You would be very limited as far as what you could do. So I feel better about Bottrill in that respect, like the fact he's able and willing to make these trades and make these moves around the edges of the roster. Time will tell whether those moves are helpful. And the other thing too is I think the trades that he's made have been kind of peripheral moves, right? Whether it's Mason Marchment,
mm,
adding him for maybe a year max as a good like rental type situation that you can flip, or getting rid of an Andre Burakovsky. That's just getting rid of a player that's a mistake, right? So
yeah.
he's able to do those sorts of things and kind of tool around the edges. But at the end of the day, this team's biggest problem still remains the lack of high end elite talent. That
Yep.
has not been addressed yet. I mean, Bottrill hasn't had too many opportunities to really address it yet.
Not yet.
I got to give him time here, but that problem still remains. And I still wonder how many tools really or assets Francis has realistically left Bottrill with to do that. The Kraken aren't even in a great position to do it. So that's going to be the difficult part. It's easy to retool things. It's easy to tear things down. It's easier to get rid of guys. But when it comes to actually acquiring high end talent, which is the biggest thing they need, that's hard. That is actually hard to do. And we'll see if Bottrell has the magic in him where he can do it. That's just something we're going to have to wait and see and find out. But I am way more confident that he has that potential than Ron Francis.
Yeah, it'll be. I was going to say a trade did happen, not related to Seattle, during this with Washington acquiring Justin Sordif from Florida. Don't know who that is. Yeah, that's the big thing. Is my big thing was how's you can tear it down. That's easy. You've kind of started to do that, and you still have a few days of the buyout window to keep moving with that. Who knows? Maybe they make trades during the draft. I don't know. I'd be surprised. Um, yeah, that is always it. You don't have those top guys. So yeah, again, I guess that's kind of where I'm at with this team from the trade deadline this year, where you shipped away Yanni Gord, Oliver Bergstrand, Brandon Tanev. Well, I really wanted them to ship off Alexiak, but they didn't do that. You made those moves. You kind of started it. You started that process. I just wonder how long it'll take to continue it. Yeah, how long the teardown takes. So, all right. Yeah, are you guys doing anything specific for the draft? Anything we can I know I normally pump up, I've talked about the armchair GM, which again, it's always fun to hear what people throw at you and hearing you try to handle that. Um,
Yeah, that's
but
in 4 days,
yeah,
by the way. Armchair GM stream on the
there you
30th.
go. See, it's like I could sense it. Um, oh, you've positioned it so it's right at the end of the buyout win, or is that just how that goes?
Well, it's basically I wanted to do it after the draft because we figured they would have done some moves up to the draft, which they certainly have. And then also free agency starts the very next day. So
Yeah.
it's going to be
Okay.
kind of a draft and trades review, free agency preview kind of thing. And because it's for June. So the July one will be probably a few days into the month. So it'll be two in quick succession. And so we'll kind of go over the moves they have made and the moves they could make. So just lots to talk. I figure it's right in the middle of everything, which is why I scheduled it there.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, my friend. Well, oh yeah, are you doing anything specific for the draft?
Yeah, so stay tuned to our social media. I mean, Emerald City HKY on Twitter and Instagram. We're going to have a lot of stuff out on there. We got my brother to help us come cover it. He's a great film guy. So he's going to be taking all sorts of video from around the draft floor. Where Dylan and I are going to be mic'd up the entire time. And so we're going to be able to get lots of great content to you that way. We should have live reactions on the picks out within minutes, probably, of the Kraken's first pick of the draft. And so it's going to be real cool. We're thinking about doing a little like documentary style film thing on that. Of course, would come out later, but stay tuned to the social media because we're going to have a lot of stuff out for you. And my brother's it's going to open up a lot of possibilities because he's really good and creative and able to come up with some great stuff.
Yeah, no, that'll be fun, especially if they make a trade or something during the draft to have that mic'd up. That'll be cool. All right, there
Yeah,
you go.
we'll have our instant reaction to that ready to go. So that should be
How much
fun.
of it'll be silence because you'll be looking down at your phone to try and get something out about like I know how it goes. I've seen it. I'm just like, oh, it's usually a quick, oh God, and then you've got to get into making something or putting it out. So, all right. Well, until tomorrow, when what time is it? You probably know because you have to be there.
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock our time. All right. 4 o'clock Pacific. Yes. Round one, pick eight. We'll see what Jason. I almost said Ron Francis. I almost said Ron Francis will do. Yeah, thank God. Jason Bottrell will do with pick eight, and maybe they move things out, find a way to move up. I doubt it, but I don't know. So, all right. So we see you next time. Take care of yourselves. Be well. Do whatever you can to make today a great day.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Jen.
Hey. Where are you going to watch all those Kraken away games?
Kraken away games, making a push. I was thinking of coming here just because Rough and Tumble is the home of circling Seattle sports, only if that's okay with you.
I mean, I love that idea. Hope to see you here.